everybody, and welcome to another series of the Masterclass series here at Montgomery County Community College and the Sound Recording and Music Technology program, along with the Mass Media Studies and Production program. Today we're going to have a great guest and a great organization talk today. It's EMEAPP Electronic Music Education and Preservation Project. And Drew Raison is here, the executive director of the company, to have a nice little discussion about some authentic vintage gear. We all talk about vintage gear and how cool it is. Well, he's got the coolest vintage gear. This organization has the best around. So here you go, Drew. Everybody, welcome.
Thank you very much. My name is Drew Raison. This is Vince Papillo Jr. over here. I spend my days with Vince in the office, and the two of us pilot this organization, EMEAPP, on a daily basis. I would like to start off by talking about the word stewardship, which is right up there on the screen. And the reason we talk about stewardship is because EMEAPP does not own this massive collection. We do have our own gear, but the collection started off as a private collection. Vince Papillo Sr. started this maybe 13, 14, 15 years ago and started to collect old synthesizers because they were affordable. They were actually affordable. And he figured this is a great investment. And then he accidentally created one of the world's most comprehensive collections of vintage gear, and he couldn't sell any of it off. It had to go in this museum, so he says it's time for a nonprofit. So I came on board at that point in the game, and Vince and I started working to take this private collection and turn it into ultimately what is just one of the most awesome collections of stuff you've ever seen anywhere. And I'm not kidding. So what you're looking at right here are a bunch of pictures of the inside of EMEAPP. EMEAPP changes constantly depending on what we're doing. We always have projects going on. Right now, Vince and I are knee-deep in the setup of a $3 million keyboard rig, vintage instruments, the finest of the finest for this performer named Michael Whalen that's coming in to do a live performance. Why do we do it? Well, we want to do concerts over there again. Now that COVID is kind of loosening its grip a little bit, we're able to do this. So this is our first in a series of events that are coming up, and we'll show you some pictures of that in just a little bit. But ultimately, EMEAPP has a responsibility to maintain, manage, develop, and promote this collection to the world. We were talking about the word stewardship. We probably have 3,000, 4,000 separate objects in the collection. We have no idea how much gear there is. It's that big. In addition to the collection of electronic musical instruments, we also have a collection of stringed instruments. A lot of them have provenance. They were used by big rock stars, people that we know. In many cases, stuff that you've heard. We also have, if you look at the tiny little banner up there, or the actual banner behind me over here, we are also the owners of Keith Emerson's Modular Moog synthesizer, considered to be the world's most famous synthesizer, the world's most dangerous synthesizer. It is a colossal beast that that has it's moody. let's just call it that. The instrument was used by Keith Emerson throughout his entire career, and it had fallen into disrepair. And finally, in the late 90s, Keith Emerson decided to have the instrument rebuilt. And it was rebuilt by a guy named Brian Kehew and Gene Stopp. And Brian and Gene are both involved over at EMEAPP. And we took delivery of this machine just around 3 years or so ago. And we get to use it on a daily basis. It's a very, very, very special instrument, to say the least. In addition to the synthesizers and the stringed instruments, we have a fairly breathtaking collection of amplifiers, mostly tube amplifiers. And you see a couple shots up there, but we'll go back and take a look at those. But we're in the rock world, so Marshall, Orange, Sound City, certainly Fender, are all over the building, along with a bunch of really unique amplifiers. And then the curator decided to start getting serious about collecting specific amplifiers and specific instruments. And now the curator's down to a point, like there's only a couple things left to completely round out this collection. I can also say that it's a unique collection. We have the amplifiers, we have the synthesizers, electromechanical instruments, the stringed instruments, and then we also have a collection of vintage recording gear. Why? Because we like vintage recording gear an awful lot. So it's been fun working with the curator to figure out what's good to add to our collection that we can actually use. So we look like a museum, and we are a museum, But in fact, we're a working museum. We're a working space, just like this control room, and this part of the school is a working machine. We produce music. We put it out there. We want people to hear these instruments, not just see videos of them burbling, or playing with toys like the one I'm going to show you guys in a couple minutes, but we actually bring artists in. We do artists in residence events and everything. So it's a very cool process, and we don't have. There's no model out there that we can follow. We had to create MEAPP from scratch. So it went from a private collection to a nonprofit. Well, how do you do that? We don't know. So we figured it out on our own. So we're 4 years old at this point in the game. We don't have money to market, which means we put our time into Instagram and Facebook and our website. I encourage you guys to go take a look there and see what's up. But when you go through this, you see a pretty interesting collection of stuff. You also see a lot of people you may or may not know. MEAPP attracts a unique audience, to say the least. A lot of bands that are rolling through town will roll up to our area and take a tour of the place because it's worth driving to Philadelphia for the day to see. And our website, again, we don't have money to throw at this thing, so we have to kind of take baby steps. So we produce feature articles and we produce videos. We have a couple series, one called Sonic Test Drive, Live at MEAPP. We have these artists that come by. They might come by for 2 or 3 hours, but they might get sucked into an instrument. So we kind of come up to them and say, mind if we aim a video camera at you? They're like, well, great. So we have all these beautiful performances of these artists that will roll through town and throw down. It's very, very exciting stuff. And we continue to develop content, and now that we have a great relationship, thanks to David Ivory, wherever he is, in this room or the other one, for making this thing happen. But we're now starting to bring students in to get involved in the projects that we're working on. Vince, why don't you go over to some images, and let's take a real quick tour, and then I'm going to show everybody some good stuff. MEAPP is 30,000 square feet. We're in an old food warehouse. Well, we'll call it a food warehouse. It is an adaptively repurposed facility. It's gone through many changes. And prior to MEAPP moving in there, it was a cold storage facility for a salad manufacturer. The salad manufacturer happens to be the curator. So the collection started to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and the building started to get smaller and smaller and smaller. So he was able to take the the salad production company, and move them to another building as the collection just simply overtook a 30,000 square foot building. It's ridiculous. And I'll tell you that 30,000 square feet is not enough. Okay, we're looking at one of the world's, well, 3 of the world's most famous synthesizers. The big wooden unit in the center is called an ARP 2500. The ARP 2500 is 51 years old. Did I do the math right?
I believe 52.
52, okay, I was close, right? 52 years old. That is one of the world's finest examples of an ARP 2500. It started off as 2 ARP 2500s, but the curator, who was unable to sleep at night or vacation properly, spent his time trying to find the cabinets, the bases for the cabinets, and all the parts necessary to turn these 2 instruments into this one. And then up on top, you see those 2 dark gray objects. Those are called ARP 2600s. The ARP 2600s, one of them is belonged to Jack Bruce from Cream. Yeah, we got a lot of Jack stuff there.
One on the left.
How can you tell that that one's Jack's? Be honest with me.
I can faintly make out the orange grease pencil marks on the parameters.
One of the interesting things about Vince Jr. is that he knows everything about everything in the building. So I have acquiesced my knowledge over to him. So I don't even, anyway, he knows where everything is. Not only do we have 30,000 square feet, but we have half a dozen semi-trailers on the building that are loaded with doubles and triples, because you can't just go out and find parts for these things. It's not like you can drive to a store and find parts from 50-year-old instruments. So we actually have to have backups, especially for electric pianos and clavinets and stuff like that. You just can't buy those parts. Why don't you flip to the next shot? Let's see what we got. Conveniently, that is another shot of the ARP 2500. The woman that is at the controls of this ARP 2500 is ARP. Alan R. Perlman. That's Alan R. Perlman's daughter. That was a horrible sentence. I'm just going to take another shot at this one. This is Dina Perlman, daughter of Alan R. Perlman, whom they named ARP after. Okay, I think that worked out well. Yeah. And she also runs the Alan R. Perlman Foundation. MEAPP gets behind people like this. Alan R. Perlman was an innovator, as was Robert Moog. and we see one of his instruments over here, well, a picture of one of his instruments over here. So we work together with organizations like this to help them, and they help us, and we do co-events and stuff like that. A wonderful time. What do we have up next? An early Japanese, early meaning 1973, 74, Roland System 700. You see all those patch cables. You need to remember when you see a big modular synthesizer like that, or the picture of the one behind me, it plays this many notes. How many? One. And that's what it took back in the early 70s to create big, thick, luscious sounds. You'll also see a series of boxes on top. 3 of them are called Space Echoes. Those are by Roland, and they are tape echo machines. And we have issues with them. We love them. We love them. We love them. We just use them everywhere. It's like pouring salt on a dish. We just can't get enough of it. What do we have up next? One of the rarest synthesizers in the world, the big white one. That whole unit is about 10 plus feet long, and that's called a Synthy 100. We were talking earlier about how a Synthy 100 was used for the original soundtrack to Doctor Who. Did I get that correct? It was the original version. No pressure.
Might have been a slightly later version. The original was a VCS 3.
See? That's what I'm talking about. I'll let him remember that stuff. And then to the right are a pair of Japanese instruments made by Korg. There are fewer than 25 of the bottom one available in the world, and that's one of the finest editions of it. Keep on going. Let's see what we got here. Keep on going. Just more modular synthesizers. This is not an exhibit, folks. This is just a bunch of shelves where we put stuff. And it just looks like an exhibit, and there's some breathtaking stuff in there, but it's this is one of those hallways that has a life of its own. Every time I walk through here, if the boss has been there or if Vince has been there, all of a sudden something new is up, and it stops me in my tracks. I can't believe I'm in front of some of this stuff. Go and keep going. Okay, let's talk about what it really takes to make these instruments work. You can buy synthesizers nowadays that are plug and play, and you can hit buttons and they sound absolutely glorious. And they'll probably last an awful long time. But these instruments are handmade instruments, and they're finicky. These were innovations, right? They were innovations. They didn't know how long these things were going to last. So the angular instrument on the left-hand side, the wooden instrument, hey, what are you doing, man? There we go. That's called a VCS Putney, or an EMS VCS3, also called a Putney. The Putney was used by Pink Floyd, not this particular one, for Dark Side of the Moon. Give me the song. On the Run. It was also used by Pete Townsend and The Who on a bazillion different songs. And Brian Eno certainly was a big fan of the Putney. And BBC Labs. BBC was a very smart, forward-thinking organization that just knocked down doors that people didn't even know were there. What else do we have here? So ultimately, what you're seeing here is a Polyfusion Series 2000 getting a rebuild. We didn't mean to rebuild the Polyfusion 2000. We meant to rebuild the keyboard. And then one of the techs realized that the synthesizer itself needed a little bit of TLC. So this is probably a 3-month rolling restoration of this breathtaking instrument. Keep going.
And there's the bottom half.
Okay, right. So what you see on the left there with the gaping holes in it is the other part of the Polyfusion 2000, as one of our techs started to pluck modules out of this one to rebuild it. This is one of my favorite instruments in the entire building. It's a very special instrument, and I think I connect very well with it. It doesn't give me a hard time when I want to use it. Maybe that's the best way to look at it. That is the inside of a Roland Jupiter 8.
Actually, that is the inside of an ARP Quadra.
That is the inside of an ARP Quadra. See how I did that? And it's clearly a Quadra. The ARP Quadra, a very special polyphonic instrument. It can play multiple notes, not just one instrument. Super, super rare. Fantastic sound. Quirkier than an old Jaguar. It always...
Car or the animal?
Yeah, that would be the car, yeah. Specifically the electrical systems of an early 70s Jaguar. And what's interesting is this instrument operates perfectly until there's a camera aimed at it or a microphone picking up the sound, and then it just kind of sputters. And that's what's going to happen next week. And that's Allison Stout. Allison is the main tech. We're able to bring the techs in one day every 2 weeks. That's how expensive it is for us, but we have to do it. What else do we have here? Okay, how about that? This room smells fantastic. I know you can't tell from right now, but this room smells fantastic. This is our main keyboard exhibit space. This touches onto FM synthesis, polysynths, monosynths, a whole grouping down here in the lower left by a guy named Don Buchla, late 1960s San Francisco. You can imagine what they were thinking at the time. And then in the back, a huge pile of drum machines. Show me what else we have here. This is the other side. These are some instruments that are tape-based. There's an instrument called a mellotron, a Chamberlin, and we have a huge collection of those tape-based instruments. And then in the center, you kind of see an exhibit where, there we go, where computers and synthesizers met. This is where it started to get interesting, because rather than having a synthesizer that can play one note at a time, here you're able to produce entire soundtracks. So one of the instruments up there was used in the making of one of the big Star Trek movies. And then off to the left is the Fairlight, the CMI Fairlight that was used for Full Metal Jacket. Just plowing through some, there you go right there. And yes, these instruments work. That doesn't mean you're going to be able to plug them in and use them. Sometimes we actually have to go through a process before we turn them on. And that process can take weeks. And yes, now let's start looking at some booty. Queen, the rock band, used to say, do we know who Queen is?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I know you. I know, it's a great band. Sheer Heart Attack, what a record. So Queen used to say no synthesizers were used in the making of this record until this one. And this is an Oberheim OBXA. And we love road cases. That one right over there that says The Who, Pete Townsend on it. That's not a road case, of course, but we love road cases. So we're very happy to display the Queen road case. And in front of it is a synthesizer from David Rosenthal from the band Rainbow. From the very early days of MTV. Rosenthal has for the past 30 years been the music director for Billy Joel. That's a pretty cool gig. It really is, and he's a regular at MEAPP as well, and he kind of helps us out on the advising end of things. In fact, we're doing a story with him right now about what it takes to have a keyboard rig on stage in front of 60,000 people. What do you do if it stops working? So we just had this fantastic interview. Oh, come on now, look at that. Tony Banks from Genesis, this is his Emulator 2. This would have been utilized in the vicinity of their Invisible Touch album. And then behind it to the left, that brown organ is a Hammond B3 organ. We have an awful lot of Hammond organs. And that was owned by John Entwistle from The Who. We have a lot of Who gear. Vince, what else we got here? Keep going. Oh yeah, man, that's great. Okay, so we have a problem with Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Want to know why? The curator loves Emerson, Lake and Palmer. You want to know why else? He loves Emerson, Lake and Palmer. I might love Emerson, Lake and Palmer too. They were a very, very long-term band that, as with many bands, changed over time. So my favorite era is the earliest, but there's a couple of albums for you. This collection of stuff that you see here in this room is Keith Emerson, Greg Lake, and Carl Palmer's gear from different eras of the band. A lot of stage-worn gear. We're not really into the stage-worn clothing and stuff, but some of it just fits so well. Hanging just up out of that shot there is a couple of hand-painted leather jackets that Emerson used to wear on stage, and that's one of Greg Lake's basses on the right. Keep on going. Okay, this used to be the cold storage portion for the salad storage company. We took this room that used to be a refrigerator and we turned it into a recording studio. Want to know why? Because we could. The other reason is because it's surrounded in 18 inches of foam. Come on. I mean, if you're going to put a studio in, you might as well, it's anywhere. It's 3/4 of the work was done for us already. We just had to convert it. I had the opportunity to participate in an event at Abbey Road, which is the big recording studio in London, the Beatles, Pink Floyd, etc. And the boss says, take the measurements of the floor. So I was able to take the measurements and he was able to find a source to put a similar floor in. And hang on, go back one. And what you're looking at in this shot is actually the setup that I was describing a little bit earlier. Emmy Award-winning artist Michael Whalen is coming in to do a big event. And this is, I'm not kidding, this is in excess of $250,000 worth of gear. No, what am I saying? $2.5 million worth. Some of the rarest of rare. This was shot last week. Now it's all completely dressed. All the cables are hidden. And we get to embark on the sound design for all the sounds he's going to be using for the performance on Monday. That's one day of sitting there tweaking synthesizers. A live event featuring an artist named Ambient. He's standing at his large synthesizer there, and he's using some of our vintage instruments. We decided we were shooting a video is what we were doing, and we decided to invite an audience. Okay, so listen, I'm going to share something with you guys on a personal basis. I'm a record producer and a studio owner. That's where I come from. And the best payoffs musically in my life have been in this kind of a scenario. A guitarist sits down, grabs an acoustic, and proceeds to, they're just warming up. You know, they're going to do it, but you get something very, very special. It's a one-on-one musical connection that you can't get elsewhere. So we decided for this event that we would try to invite 25 or 30 people and see if we can make it a fundraiser. So we did, and guess what? Tickets sold out in 24 hours. It was the coolest audience on earth. And two artists performed, Ambient and a gentleman named Don Slepian, who is an electronic music pioneer. The lighting rig we flew ourselves, the walls we finished ourselves, and we still have yet to do the acoustic treatment in that room. And as many of you can tell in the audio realm, the acoustic treatment is an effort. But the control room is underway right now. That's a group of students that came through, and one of them turned some knobs they shouldn't have. And it was that guy right there. No offense to that guy. It's all good. That would be the curator making a little tweak. We had to move the whole Keith Emerson setup to accommodate our video shooting. The piano that's under wraps there, we haven't shown the world yet, but that's a 1972 Steinway Model D that used to be Keith Emerson's. That's a very famous piano. And the Steinway Model D, it's an industry standard. It's just like a Stratocaster or a Les Paul. This particular one happens to be exceptionally good. And you'll see a couple speaker cabinets in the back that say The Who. Those are the Leslie rotating speaker cabinets that match the organ that I showed you a moment ago in the keyboard room. We also have Keith Emerson's other grand piano as well. This is an earlier version of our control room. It was built under duress. We had to build it very quickly. When you couldn't get wood, the supply chain had ceased functioning, and we had to move very swiftly, which means that we're starting off with a 90-degree room. Every wall is 90 degrees. That's it. So we're starting off in this resonant echo cavity. So we had some custom curtains made, and we've started putting the acoustic treatment together. And we're going with red, can you tell? Those Genelec speakers, as you folks are, we are huge Genelec fans. And then we have another set of speakers that are called Duntech Sovereigns. They're a good 6 feet tall, considered to be some of the finest speakers ever made. And we just lucked out getting them, frankly. We really did. Okay, we call this room Amp City. Does anybody want to guess why?
There's a lot of amps in it.
It's also a tremendous smelling room. Keep on plowing through here. Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, Steely Dan. This is Frank Zappa's rig, folks. This is Frank Zappa's actual guitar rig. This is it. You know, if you're a Frank Zappa fan, you've heard that rig a million times. And that would be Frenchie the dog, who he used to bring out on stage all the time. Fender amplifiers there, Rickenbacker Transonics, some stuff from the Doors. The most amazing collection of Jim Marshall's work. Marshall amplification. I'm sure everybody's seen Marshall amps. Vox. Right? And many of these are actually items of provenance. Up on top on the left, that's Pink Floyd's monitor rig from back in the early days of the band. Well, the earlier days of the band. Keep on plowing through here. This is a beautiful row of amplifiers with provenance. Robert Fripp from King Crimson, Moody Blues. The one that says stage is Eric Clapton's Marshall Full Stack that he had from 1984 to 2011. And yes, it was at Live Aid. Next to it, the high-watt Marshall rig was from a band called Fleetwood Mac. Lindsey Buckingham used that rig to record and tour the album Rumors. Next to it, no provenance, but that's one of the world's rarest Marshall stacks. That's called a 100 stack. And then the whole rest of the rig down is Pete Townsend from The Who. Pete even graced the upper right-hand corner of the upper right-hand cabinet with the headstock of a guitar because Pete used to smash it. And we have a lot of his smashed cabinets, and they're very sexy. Who's ever heard of a band called Yes? Who's ever heard of a song called Roundabout? Okay, you know the organ solo? That's the organ right there above where it says Rick Wakeman Keyboards. That's the actual organ that recorded that solo. That's actually the rig that recorded all of Yes's records from the time that Wakeman came on board. We have a unique relationship with Rick and with Steve Howe from the band Yes. We have much of Steve Howe's gear. We have some of Chris Squire's gear. In fact, the bass that you see there on the right-hand side in the lower corner is one of Chris Squire's Rickenbacker basses. And as I mentioned before, look, we have a problem with road cases. Just get over it. We can't get enough of it. So, and we have so much Who gear that the curator decided to set up a bunch of Who cases, which does not make me sad at all. Deep Purple. Anybody a fan? Okay, I think I see a hand in the back there. The wooden and shiny, there you go. Vincent's got the John down there. That used to be belong to John Lord, and that was that is an RMI 300 series electric piano that was used on many of his recordings. And then you see these odd-looking lounge organs, stand-up lounge organs. They don't particularly hold any value individually, but when you put the entire collection of every color ever made together, it becomes unusual. Those are called custom combos. The light color organ is a prototype. It's a Hammond organ prototype. Anybody ever heard of Mahavishnu Orchestra? All right, I like you guys. That is Jan Hammer's Fender Rhodes electric piano from Mahavishnu. It's funny because we don't always point it out to people, but some people will turn the corner and just gasp. It's like, okay, they're up to speed. That's just a collection of cool stuff. More organs and speaker cabinets.
So we refer to this area as Organ Avenue.
So in South Philadelphia, there's Organ Avenue, but we call this Organ Avenue.
Organ Avenue.
To the two of us, it's funny. Yeah. To everybody else, they're not getting it. That's okay. Okay, so this is what's happening now. This room is where a portion of our effects pedals reside. And in the center is a table, and that is our new podcast system. So when people roll through, sometimes we feel fairly spontaneous. It's like, let's sit down and talk. This is towards the end of the tour, so everybody's just, and we've collected some fantastic interviews from people there. Just recently added video to it. And what you see on the wall behind, to the left, is a collection of ultra-rare effects pedals, the holy grails of distortion pedals, some of the earliest models of talk boxes like Peter Frampton, Joe Walsh, et cetera, used to use or still use. This is a new acquisition. The two outside instruments, the black and white ones, are actually organs, but they're played by guitar. So there's an MCI, right?
MCI.
On the left, and a Vox guitar organ on the right-hand side. Discreetly, I'll point out on the wall behind there, you see a little box that says JH Experience. Does anybody want to guess JH? Somebody, come on.
Jimi Hendrix.
Now, right above the Jimi Hendrix Experience case, on the left-hand side, is a project that Jimmy was working on when he died called the Always On Distortion System. He was trying to create, he was always switching out distortion pedals, and he was working with his tech to create a component that was always engaged in a system. On the right side of that is a Guild Thunderbass amplifier, which is a solid-state, fairly junky-sounding amplifier, but it ends up that Jimi Hendrix used to use it as a part of his guitar rig when he would go into the studio. And then above that wah-wah pedal is it. Let's play a game. What's the most important wah-wah pedal on earth? That one. Jimmy's there. I say it out loud.
Jimi Hendrix's Woodstock guitar pedal.
That is Jimi Hendrix's Woodstock guitar pedal. So that is the actual wah-wah pedal that he used on stage that everybody on earth has heard. And then to the left of it is one of his 6 Arbiter fuzz face distortion pedals, because he was always tweaking his effects, always trying to work things out. So we're very, 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 very lucky to have that stuff. Vince, what do we have next? Oh, come on. These are all echo units, and each one is completely different and quirky. What do we have next?
Moog room is next.
Okay, Moog. It's pronounced Moog. It's not Moog.
Thank you.
Okay? I just say that out loud. It's fun to say Moog, but Moog is the guy. And Robert Moog, who you see on the wall, a drawing of him on the wall over there, is a hero to us at EMEAPP. Why? He created something that never existed before. He created the synthesizer for the musician. He didn't create the instrument to be able to sell millions. He wanted to sell few to the right people. And the big boys down on the end are good examples of large frame Moog modulars. And again, if you take a look at Keith Emerson, you can see there's certainly a similarity. Keith's has been modified heavily, and the one on the left in the back there was modified heavily as well. That was plucked out of Penn State University. The one to the right of it, okay, nobody's going to know who I'm talking about. Buck Owens?
Sounds familiar.
Okay. Buck Owens was on, you guys are too young for this one, was on Hee Haw. Hee Haw was this cheesy show in the 70s, and it was kind of funny, but Buck Owens was a character, to say the least. Well, he was very moved by a very early synthesizer record called Switched on Bach, right? Super important record by Walter Carlos. And he loved the idea so much that he decided to create Switched on Buck. So he went back and did the Buck Owens music with a guy named Jeff Haskell on that very synthesizer, and he put it out as switched on Buck. So I recommend that everybody listens to it. Don't buy it. Just listen to it one time.
Definitely recommend listening to Wendy Carlos.
Well, yeah, the Wendy Carlos, the original Switched on Bach is an epic record. It is so important, and it's a great listen as well. But ultimately, Buck Owens finished the project. They blanket wrapped that synthesizer and stuck it in a room. That was 1968, right? The curator finds it. There it is. And now it's going through a rehab process. We rebuilt the power supply inside of it, and now Vince and I get to go up there and just exercise it. Right now it's sputtering a little bit, and it's complaining and whining like me on a Saturday morning. I should have gotten a better laugh out of that. But it's working. Okay, now, I'm not going to drop to my knees here, but other people have when they see the instrument on the upper right-hand corner. That is the prototype of what's called the Mini Moog. The Mini Moog is such an important instrument in electronic music. You see many Mini Moogs over to the left, but that's the actual prototype. That's the first one. That's where it all started. And we have all 4 prototypes. Vince, what do we have next? How are we doing time-wise?
People in an evolution class, pay attention to all of this.
Oh, nice. The instrument that we are seeing down towards the middle on the, go back, right there. Those 2 boxes there are a synthesizer that were owned by a gentleman named Gershon Kingsley. Gershon Kingsley, again, is an early electronic music pioneer. He's the composer of a piece of music called Popcorn that you've all heard, but you didn't know that it was called Popcorn. I will not impersonate that song right now with a microphone in my hand. But Vince will. No, he won't. Show me the next shot. Keep going. Oh, wait, actually, go back. On the left-hand side in this shot, all those black boxes are ultra-rare, super important Moog synthesizers, including the one on the bottom. There's 3 separate boxes. That was Robert Moog's personal Moog synthesizer. That's what MEAPP is about. So, yeah, we have a Moog synthesizer. No, we got Moog's Moog. And, I mean, I'm saying that proudly and kind of jokingly, but damn, I mean, that's important stuff. And then you'll see other stuff on the right-hand side, a lot of other Moog design stuff, polyphonic synthesizers, organs that have Moog synthesizers built in them. What you got next?
Last image.
And we have a bazillion Theremins. Are anybody hip to what a theremin is? Right? You know, it's a hands-off instrument. You know, one hand handles pitch and the other one handles volume. Very, very special instruments. And then on the floor, now this is interesting because nobody's seen this yet, and so I have to be cautious, but you'll see a set of bass pedals. Would you give a little jiggy on the right there? So that's called a set of Moog Taurus bass pedals, and there's a couple of them in the shot here. What's interesting about that set is that they came from Sting, from the Police. So the Police always used bass pedals. They had to. And you think about Don't Stand So Close to Me, and the beginning of that is a set of Moog Taurus pedals. So now he and I are obsessing about the fact, you know, is this the one? Did they use this one? Can we find sessions, you know, pictures of the sessions? Which one did they use? Wouldn't it be kind of cool to have the actual one that did that? Okay, so that's the end of our very brief tour. The tour of MEAPP requires 3 hours, literally 3 hours. It's a crazy, crazy thing. I would like to switch gears and talk about a couple items that Vince and I brought. First of all, Vince is going to have a kid. Can we get a round of applause? He's not doing it today. I hope it's okay I called him out. If it isn't, then there's nothing I can do about it. I'm going to start off with this. We have an interesting collection. I'm going to call it an intriguing collection of handmade objects. This is a device that's based on an IC chip made by Texas Instruments. And the fellow that made this took the chip and decided, what do I want it to do? And he wired it up to a faceplate. This would be so much easier without a handheld. Hey, you're upside down. There we go. This guy usually sits on my desk and just burbles and makes strange sounds all day long. So basically, it's a synthesizer. It's a noisemaker, if you will. It's not really designed to be melodic. I'm sure you can play it melodically, but really it's just a fun project to do with a chip. And we have an awful lot of these handmade instruments. It's an important part of the growth of electronic music, because what happened before synthesizers? How would you make electronic music? Well, you had to kind of make your own stuff. It's all DIY. And one story that we were talking about before we started rolling today is a gentleman named Larry Fast. Larry Fast is a keyboard player that caught my ear when Peter Gabriel started putting out his solo records. The keyboards were different, just different, and really, really cool. So it ends up being this guy, Larry Fast. Larry Fast was in part discovered by Rick Wakeman from Yes, who basically said, "How are you doing that?" And Larry was building his own stuff. He was modifying stuff that was available to be able to create his own rig. And he would even take that stuff out live with him. Well, it's probably still in his basement in Jersey. So we're going to ask him. It's like, hey, man, why don't you loan us some of that stuff? So hopefully in the next couple months, we'll be able to blow out this DIY collection and everybody can take a look at stuff like that. I'm going to shift gears and talk about what it takes to be a rock star on stage. This is something that you don't normally get to see. It looks like we have a bass and a guitar. Now, if you look at the guitar, it's a Fender Stratocaster. A Stratocaster is ubiquitous. Oh, there's a Stratocaster right up there. The body style, the electronics, the way it plays, the sound, it's a very consistent thing. But you'll see these two gigantic Gibson pickups in it. Gibson and Fender are two different companies. Pete Townsend from The Who took a regular 1990 Stratocaster and had his tech put in two Gibson P90 pickups. We can assume that Pete Townsend loves P90 pickups because the early Who was based on the P90. Inside of a Gibson SG, which is a beautiful guitar, but they don't tend to do well live on stage because they snap. They're oddly weighted, and they can be a little bit inconsistent. So in this case, here's the sound that he needed, but in a real workhorse of a body. Then you'll notice a little mystery knob down here. The mystery knob controls a hidden piezoelectric pickup that's in the bridge tailpiece assembly. And that allows Townsend to get an acoustic sound on stage from an electric guitar. So if you think about a song like Pinball Wizard that starts with acoustic and switches over to electric, that could be a good example of not having to change a guitar in the middle of the intro of a song. And then on the back of it, it's pretty modified. You can take a look at it afterwards. But there's another panel that controls all the settings for that piezoelectric pickup. This is a special instrument. It's built like a tank. Pete's not going to smash one of these on stage. He's going to smash one that he doesn't care about. So this one has a lot of heart and soul in it, and spent an awful lot of time with Townsend's brother Simon and the band The Who. Hey, speaking of The Who, John Entwistle was the bass player of The Who, and he had an awful lot of bass. Do you have that picture with you by chance? Is it already up behind me? Oh, this is what he does. Hey, that's John Entwistle from The Who, also known as the Ox, and there's the bass right there. The Who interest us for a number of different reasons. Entwistle interests us for a specific reason. He was not a standard bass player. He was truly unique in how he did what he did, and we want to know more. And this bass is a great example of it. This is an alembic baby bass with a graphite neck. And when it first arrived, we were all a little bit perplexed because A, it looks a little strange. B, why is there a whammy bar on a bass guitar? And even better, why is the whammy bar backwards? You have to pull to get the pitch to drop. And then the electronics in this thing are mind-blowing. This is like a studio-grade semi-parametric equalizer times 2. One for the high end, one for the low end. So you can dial in the frequency you want, and you can dial in how wide your bandwidth is, and then how much you're adding to it. It also has a standby switch. You don't usually see standby switches on instruments. But if you're in The Who, things are a little bit different. And this unit is so freaky that it has to be powered by this very special power supply. And the power supply sends power to the pickups and to the electronics. And then it uses, to make things even more confusing, a very custom X number pin, 5-pin XLR cable. And that's the package. So to me, it's like whoever loses this is fired. But this is a great example. Entwistle used this on a couple songs on Who's Next? No. Who Are You? I always get that backwards. And this is another great example of an absolute workhorse instrument. So the story is, and what I had to learn on this thing is I finally decided one day, let's plug this thing in. So Vince and I plug it into an old acoustic bass rig, which is, and I have no expectations for this weird looking bass, and I was put in my place in seconds. I've never played a finer bass in my life. It is fast. You can do things on this bass you cannot do on other basses. And when you watch Entwistle play, his dynamic style was fed by instruments like this. This is not just like a standard P bass or a jazz bass. So again, two great stringed instruments that show the level that these artists have to go to. David Gilmour from Pink Floyd, that black Stratocaster that he played all the time was also highly customized, and sometimes you just don't know it. So we have this fantastic opportunity to look inside of these instruments and see what they're about. He's dead. Frank Zappa. Anybody heard of Frank Zappa? Does anybody care about Frank Zappa? Okay, we have the Frank Zappa problem.
That's not a problem.
No, I guess it's not. I want to see how cool I am. Watch this sound. All right. This is an effects unit that's called a Mutron biphase. The Mutron biphase is a dual phase shifter that offers some functionality that other ones don't offer. Alan Parsons used this on iRobot. The biphase is a necessary component for certain Fender Rhodes electric piano players. It has a sound of its own. Well, obviously, Frank Zappa liked this one an awful lot. And what he used to do is he would actually have his techs disassemble effects units to put into his greater effects system. So you saw Frank Zappa's rig before. This would have shown up in different ways within his rig. But what we love about this is that it was used quite a bit. Another nice little function on this thing, you can even see some of the inputs and output jacks on the back have been removed. He doesn't care. He's trying to find a sound nobody else has ever found before. But here's an ICA sticker, Intercontinental Absurdities. That was the name of his touring company. And ICA was responsible for moving all of the band's gear from point A to point B. And then he also had a component called Joe's Garage, which is named after one of his records. And we have a whole bunch of Joe's Garage gear as well. But this tells a loud story. It's a dedication to a technology. We are so proud to have that. There have been articles written about this very Mutron biphase. We won't take this tape off. We won't take that tape off. It's there forever. We talked about stewardship. We talked about the collection. We talked about the history of the collection. We looked at a number of highlighted pieces. We showed you some cool pieces that explain the level of which artists have to go through with their instruments. Same thing with amplifiers. Let me tell you what, some of these amplifiers are really highly customized. Some of them are, Clapton's rig is off the shelf. Like you just went to some music store and you picked up the Marshall stack. He doesn't change, he would change his speakers out apparently periodically. Okay, does anybody have any questions? Come on.
I have one.
You're having a good time. I saw you, by the way.
I have one that's kind of specific, though. One of the earlier pictures of the keyboard exhibit, I saw what looked like something that was a mallet, like it had mallets and was like fully electronic.
We're going to get along just fine.
I would totally like to know about that.
Okay, so Don Buchla, late 1960s, San Francisco. Bob Moog felt that the black and white keyboard was a necessity. Don Buchla did not. He felt that there were other ways. You don't have to rely on a black and white keyboard to be able to play a synthesizer. So we have an instrument by Buchla down in the lower left-hand corner there. No, more to the right, more to the right, more to the right, down. This was designed for one concert event to be played by a cello. A cello. On the back, the large black and white object is a PPG system that was designed to be played by a tenor sax. So, in answer to your question, that is called a marimba lumina gold. So the marimba lumina is hard to find. It's hard to say as well. But ultimately what that is it is both a performance surface and a sound generating tool. But here's the freaky thing, because Buchla was Buchla, you don't take the mallet and hit it. Each mallet is an antenna. And you'll see they're different colors. So you can have the red one control a filter, and the blue one could control pitch, and the yellow one could control this. And then
These pucks you can slide up and down the bars.
And those pucks are colored as well, and you can also use those pucks to set a range. So I only want you to go from here to here. So that's a freaky mid-90s instrument that we are trying to find time to plug in and mess with. But what's going to happen is, Vince is the boss of this stuff. So he'll get it out of there and he'll get it interfaced to with this and to this and to this, and we're not going to get work done for 3 days. Because there's no manuals for it. It's like you have to discover this stuff. I always have a big modular not big. I always have a synthesizer sitting next to my desk, a weird one, just to try to understand what it does and how it does it. I'm not trying to master it, but that's one that's going to be intriguing to say the least.
And next to it, is that the Buchla easel?
That's Don Buchla's Buchla.
That's so cool.
That's Don Buchla's Buchla.
That's so cool.
Dude, that is his personal music easel. And that's called the glass easel. It's actually clear. It's clear lucite.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's a breathtaking collection. There's also a story that we tell on the tours because it's a great story. There used to be an urban myth that Don Buchla painted a couple of his synthesizers with paint that was laced with LSD. And for decades, it's just a great story until 2 years ago, a Buchla instrument is getting rebuilt in San Francisco, and the tech has to call 911 because something's gone really wrong. And he was working on a Buchla synthesizer. So all of a sudden, the urban myth became real. That's the Buchla story. Who's got? Give me. Yeah.
Do you have any equipment from the krautrock bands such as Agitation Free, early Kraftwerk, as well as Asherah Temple, because they were considered important in terms of developing different sounds within modular synthesizers at the time?
Okay, so that was an awesome question. The direct answer is yes, we do. We are. Gino Wong is a new part of MEAPP in the past year or so, and Gino focuses on that genre pretty deeply, so we're actually learning a lot from him. We have an Echo computer rhythm drum machine, which was of that era. We actually have the prototype, so that's a good example of one step towards it. We also have some gear from Kraftwerk, especially their Sennheiser vocoder. And we are still doing our due diligence to find out, was that used on Man Machine? Was it used on this? Was it used on this? Because come on, I mean, Kraftwerk is, I'm not allowed to play Kraftwerk in my kitchen, by the way. Yeah, my wife is like, anything but that band. I'm like, oh, okay.
It's a great band, though.
I listen to a lot of Kraftwerk and Asherah Temple and all that. I love that genre.
Yeah, they're very, very innovative people.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. And then the other thing is we have a huge collection of transcendent synthesizers, which were kit synthesizers that a lot of those producers and players would use as well.
Two things. First, I'm so psyched because everything you're showing now is going to be in the lectures in the evolution class within the next 2 weeks. This is
Awesome.
touching all of this stuff.
Good.
So pay attention. And yes, that story about the Buchla engineer scraping the crystalline substance on the panel when he was cleaning it and then spent the next 8 hours of his life.
Whee!
Exactly. So that's the story that's going to come up in class. I'm just curious. We were just recently talking about Forbidden Planet and that score and the Barons. And I didn't know that you had, this kind of stuff. Do you happen to have any of their stuff?
No, we do not know.
No, but that's interesting to talk about. We do have our focus on going after some specific instruments, and since the Keith Emerson estate, family, friends, etc., and Rick Wakeman and everybody is starting to understand who MEAPP is, I'm hoping that that will continue to magnetically bring other important players into the fold. We're actually talking right now with a gentleman named Jason Miles. I was into progressive rock until I kind of realized that I was on a pathway that isn't going to take me where I need to go, and I realized I needed to get a dose of pop music. This is as an engineer, recording engineer, right? I've got to expand my thinking. So the guy at the local record store hooked me up with a Luther Vandross record called "Give Me the Reason." Okay, well, I'm not into R&B at the time. I don't know anything about it, but okay, here's my $15. And I proceeded to be blown away. These sounds were amazing. Well, now we're on the phone with the dude, Jason Miles, and he's retiring. He's moving to Portugal. And he has piles of notebooks of all of the sessions that he did for that record and with working with Miles Davis. He's like, do you guys have any interest in this? It's like, yeah. So we'll have those in a couple of weeks. And he's going to come down before he moves to Portugal and take a tour of the place. And it's exciting stuff.
And then on the film soundtrack tip, we do have several instruments that were used in the making of some very well-known film soundtracks. This Fairlight CMI was used by Vivian Kubrick in the making of the Full Metal Jacket soundtrack.
What else do we have?
And we have the Moog synthesizers that were used in the making of the Apocalypse Now soundtrack. That one is currently on loan, but it's this guy right here in the middle.
It's a very cool room.
I saw on the, I think the Instagram page, there's like a picture of Malcolm Cecil from Tonto the
Yeah.
Shining Headband. Do you have any of that sort of?
No, that whole system resides up in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Malcolm Cecil, MEAPP was too new to be able to interface with Malcolm, and the transaction of a synthesizer called Tonto, which is a freaky handmade assemblage of Moog, Oberheim, and ARP synthesizers. Stevie Wonder was a big partaker of that particular instrument. It was all designed by this guy, Malcolm Cecil, who passed on a couple months ago. So we actually gave him a posthumous award. We really wish we could have connected with him, but we were unable to. We've also given awards to Wendy Carlos, who is untouchable. You can't forget it. No phone calls, no emails, no nothing. So we had to go through a certain chain to be able to get her to say yes to that she'd be willing to accept it. And Jan Hammer as well. Yeah, right. He's another one that's just. So we accidentally asked him if he would accept it, and he's like, "Yeah, that's cool." So hopefully Jan Hammer will come down sometime.
We hope.
Oh my God, let me know.
Have you ever worked with or seen or anything with, I forget his name, but Del Shannon's friend played like a early tube synthesizer on, I think it's Runaway and Little Town Flirt. Have you ever seen anything with that?
No, but I'll like.
Instrument called a clavioline, and we actually do have one in our collection. I'm trying to find a picture of it.
See,
I like this.
that's what I'm talking about, right?
It's I don't have a shot of it, but it's in this vicinity of our main keyboard room.
I get to see it in an hour. You don't.
Second question. You said you replaced a lot of the parts and you had stuff with tubes. For the love of God, I can't find them. Where do you find the low microfarad, high voltage capacitor?
Oh, so easy. You ask Allison to get it. Right? Come on, man. I don't know that. No, we actually have a group of techs that focus on that. And then also the curator is so hyper aware of the parts that we need. You know, like all of a sudden one day a box will show up and it'll be 100 knobs off a Moog. You know what I mean? Or a whole bunch of 6L6 tubes or whatever we need because we have to have it. And again, you can't find it. So we actually have been developing our own source of parts.
The word we use for those kind of parts is unobtainium. Yeah.
Get it? So yeah.
So let her go first. Mine's quick.
Oh, it was okay. Good.
Oh, do you have anything used by the Silver Apples?
No. Now, funny because the second you said Silver Apples, I get a picture of the band right in my head.
That makes me think of Morton Sabat.
No, that would be an album. We have none of his stuff. So I'm going to say no, but now I'm going to have to check the band out when I get home. How recent is that band?
I guess like 60s, 70s, they like did this, they opened for like Jimi Hendrix a bit, and they also like...
Okay, I know who you're talking about. It's interesting because in order to do what Vince and I do, we have to stay on top of things and we have to do our own research in the past. And I keep on hearing this band called Yellow Magic Orchestra brought up here.
Yeah.
Well, right. So, and everybody's like, you got to check them out. I'm like, I don't have time. So finally, just this past weekend, I'm by myself down in Central South Jersey, and I got Spotify, which I don't love, but I did at that point in the game. And I listened to everything Yellow Magic Orchestra. Why didn't I discover that band 30 years ago? They are freakishly good. I mean, poppy beyond belief. Just didn't know what to expect. In fact, that prototype mini Moog that I showed you was used by Yellow Magic Orchestra, the actual band. Yeah.
Basically, they were big influence with techno and hip hop when.
Oh, sure. Because they kind of came out of nowhere, and I can understand why everybody taps into that band. I just didn't expect to. I didn't expect to find riches, with the band.
Are those Bottoms red acrylites?
Thank you for asking that question. So, no. That hurts, man. Come on. No, so we're huge Led Zeppelin fans because if you're not, you're weird. And Senior was able to assemble that kit. The majority of that kit is vintage, first issue. And then he was able to pick up a couple of the extra drums to fill out the Bonham style. And then he and Vince were able to also score all the Paiste 2002 cymbals that go with it. So the thing is, this is a big drum set physically huge, physically lucite. Is it lucite? It's not plastic.
That's acrylic.
Acrylic. I'll go with acrylic. Vista Lights, indeed. That's specifically the brand. And the thing is, I have this hate relationship with Vista Light drums. As a producer and engineer, you know, right. I mean, it's just they're awesome looking, but boy, they just sound like honk. And
So it was that kit you're talking about.
yeah, so yeah. So and it's actually amber, but the lighting convinced you otherwise. So ultimately, I set the kit up in the corner because I had to make good with it. I've got to learn why do people love these things. I've had 2 Vista Lights, huge kits, blue kits. I haven't had, but they've been at my studio for extended periods of time. Well, this kit's really special. I'll tell you what. I was sad when we had to break it down for the big video shoot because now I got to go pound on the Slingerland kit. I don't play the drums, by the way. I just love beating the daylights out of them.
And then on the Led Zeppelin tip, so this head right here is called an Acoustic 360. And we have a head, a matching one sitting on this amp right here. This was John Paul Jones' bass head.
And actually, straight ahead, if you see the cabinet that says Who, on top of it is a high-watt bass head that was used by John Entwistle for the making of Live at Leeds, which is a pretty the look on your face is cracking me up. I know. Can you believe you're even looking at a picture of it? We get to walk in the room.
Wait to get in there. Like I'm so excited.
Here's a pamphlet of my business cards, people. Don't be shy. And don't try to call me because I'm not going to answer.
And Drew, what I would like to do too, as far as people coming, we'll do like, we're going to figure out 15 or so, and then we'll organize it through Drew.
Yeah.
And then we'll take groups of people at a time to the place. So you can just contact me, and then I contact Drew, and then we'll be able to organize that.
And it's a different tour than if you just came knocking on the door, because we can speak freely. Because you guys know what's going on, which is cool. Also, up above that Who thing, you see all that other gear. That's Pink Floyd as well. There's an album called Gumma that Pink Floyd did 250 years ago, and on the back, 200 years ago, and on the back of it is all a shot of all their gear. And I remember being a kid going, "Wow, look at that!" Now I walk into the room, I'm like, "Wow, look at that," because it's right there.
That's not my fault. That's called a microphone drop, people.
It was only a half a mic drop.
You know, during the start of the presentation, you mentioned there was a couple pieces that you needed to get to kind of fill it in.
Yeah.
What are the holy grails that are out there that you really have your eyes on?
So the direct answer is that it's probably better if I don't answer it. The curator is the one that obsesses about it. So I don't know what he would actually get should it come available. I can say that right now he's down to a point of finding ultra unique one-off instruments. So the Mini Moog, you used to have to, like with this bag, but you got to patch everything. Well, the Mini Moog, you have to dial everything in. There's no presets. So he was able to find a one-off Mini Moog preset device, which we haven't even taken pictures of and put it out there yet. I mean, you've seen it, but you didn't know it. I tell people it's like this doesn't exist. So
There's that instrument right in the back. So,
yeah, but don't look at it. Don't even look at it. But ultimately, right now, it's individual instruments, and we're interested in bringing certain people and their instruments on board. You know, and frankly, somebody like Wendy Carlos, what's going to happen when Wendy moves on? It would be a travesty if that stuff ends up being bought by collectors and just disappears. An organization like EMEAPP, we could take her entire studio, which is still intact, and recreate it in the building and let people use it. So ultimately, I think that the curator would be the better one to answer specific instruments, but I can tell you that we continue to try to bring the world-class mega performers on board. I mean, Wendy Carlos's music was just so important. So we would hope that that's the grade that we could be moving into in the future, and perhaps that's why Rick Wakeman approached us. The guy from Yes, because Keith Emerson's stuff is there. He wants this is where it goes, and it's like 10 minutes from here. Questions? Oh, come on, man! What's the matter with you people? Yeah.
So, what is the significance of the EDP WASP?
Okay, Electronic Dream Plant was an organization back in the 70s that made fairly inexpensive, or we'll call them reasonably priced, small, quasi-flexible synthesizers. And they're unique instruments. They rarely had regular black and white keys. They had more of the touch-sensitive, skin-conductive kind of means of playing them. They've regained in popularity because a company has reissued the EDP WAS. A couple companies actually have reissued different versions of them. From our perspective at EMEAPP, Electronic Dream Plant knocked down a couple doors. They were able to create intriguing and useful instruments at a great price range. So now, in addition to the regular Electronic Dream Plant instruments, we have some very, very customized versions of those instruments. And when you come over, I'll show you. Remind me, and I'll show you. So one of them's really freaky. Conveniently, Vince already has a couple of them up on the screen here.
I've always been so fascinated with them. That's why I was asking and all that.
Well, they're very special instruments. They really are. And they were interesting because you could buy the sequencer separately, and you could buy the monosynth, and you could buy this. So the curator has put together a huge collection of the Electronic Dream Plant instruments. And this is something that's worth talking about. Why don't you write up a story about them? Let's share notes, get you in front of the instruments. Some of them are playable. Some of them we would never plug in because they'll blow up in your face.
Sure, I would
You
love to.
You can plug it in.
But isn't that the sound you're looking for? Explosion?
Well, these instruments, they run on smoke, and you have to put the smoke on the inside.
Sometimes we have to put the smoke back inside of it.
Old Howard mode.
Sadly, there's one instrument right there, the blue guy off to the right, which is an early emulator, and we were shooting photographs for a book called Synth Gems 1, which is an epic book if you're a synth nerd. And the guy says, "Hey, can you plug it in and take a picture?" That was a mistake.
Because you want the front panel lit up and everything. And
Yeah, it lit up. It lit up
That was
bad.
my bad. I let the smoke out.
Yeah. Ultimately, we have to be reminded of this because sometimes we can just go grab something off the wall, plug it in, and use it. And sometimes it's the riskiest thing in the world. And it ends up in that shop with Allison saying, "Oh, man."
Is that what happens? It smokes and it ends up at the bottom of the list.
Well, yeah, man, come on. Yeah, no, another low blow. That is the case. And frankly, we have a greater list of what instruments need to be upgraded to be able to be used. And we're trying to support artists. We're bringing in artists in residence. What are you interested in? So it's a push-pull. And again, there's no model that we can follow. We have to do this ourselves. We have to figure it out ourselves. So it does end up at the bottom of the list. How important is an old emulator? Well, probably not as important as the big Synclavier system we're trying to get running, and stuff like that. Yeah, so we got this, but you saw when you were over there, this bazillion-dollar New England digital system from the mid-'90s. It's the largest Synclavier system I've ever been in front of. And, we're down to having to find a 5 1/4-inch floppy cleaning kit from Greece, right? It took 2 weeks to get this dumb thing over here, just so we can kind of get the system to boot. Once we get it to boot, oh man, we're not going to get anything done. Are you kidding me? Yeah, there's a bunch.
But we'll have to start 3D printing the things that you need.
We're already there. Allison had to do that to repair some of the instruments. You can't find parts for these things. One instrument was, and in fact, I just wrote an article about this. It's called an EML 400/401. And it's up on top there, the open box, if you will. There we go. Now we're talking dirty. So this instrument was pretty much shot. It was going to be an exhibit-only instrument because you can't get those slide potentiometers, the faders. You can't get them. You just can't get them, and there's no modern ones that will fit. So she sits there and just kind of chews on it for a couple of visits, and finally she says, "All right, I got it." A couple of weeks later, she shows up with these plastic PC boards that she designed and had manufactured. She cuts them out, stacks them a certain way, and puts a new potentiometer on it. It's called a daughter board assembly. And all of a sudden, after I think 90X faders or whatever it was, she hated that machine, but she saved it. That would have been it. It would have been gone. She literally preserved that instrument, and that's a rare instrument. And she hustled because we have a guy named, he's electronic music pioneer Don Slepian. I'll never call him Don Slepian. I always call him electronic music pioneer Don Slepian. Specialized in that instrument, and now he's a regular at EMEAPP. It's like, well, we have to get this instrument going. Let's let this guy loose on it. Other questions?
You said you just worked with 5 1/4-inch discs. Do you try to archive them?
So again, you people are hitting me below the belt. So it goes like this. We're having this. Again, we're not the Smithsonian, right? And how do we do this? How do Vince and I do this? So to answer your question, when an instrument comes in of value, Keith Emerson's instruments, the Queen instrument, Tony Banks' instrument, one of the earliest things we do is we get that thing fired up and we suck the data out of it immediately, because Tony Banks sounds, this is critical. I mean, this is important. Now, the same thing happens with the big boys. So, the Synclaviers and the Combrios and all those instruments there, each one has its own operating system, its own disc style. and we're trying to work out a way, a system that we can build that can take a 5 1/4 sloppy or the smallest floppy disk. It's a sloppy disk. That's what I'm going to call it. Get over it. It's a thing, right? And ultimately, we can then print it down onto the drive, and then we can use these devices called GoTech drives. And the GoTech is a flash RAM. So we're hoping that we can do that. So rather than having to manage these falling apart floppy disks, we're able to just hit a button and the operating system loads in. It's a colossal process. Tony Banks' machine actually has a GoTech built into it, and we have a pile of GoTechs. Vince, if you just zoom in, you can actually see it. It just is where the other drive used to be. So that way Tony can plug it in, well, his tech can plug it in, hit one button, and it fires up the operating system. So it's a cool thing, but that's what we have to do. We also have this massive archive of paper documents, design documents, schematics, marketing stuff. And we look at the sound libraries along the same angle. We have to protect these. And it's just a nightmare. How do you do it? We got to build this massive computer rig. Luckily, we've got these like really heavy duty brainiacs that work with us. One of whom is at EMEAPP right now. His name is Mike Hunter, who's also a synthesist named Ambient. But he's a super genius. So it's great having him around. He's like, I've never fired up a synclavier. I can get it working. And lo and behold, he's the guy that's going to get it working. Other questions?
Do you guys work with anybody from Beltone Synthworks?
Yes, you've already seen them. Allison is Beltone.
I thought so. I thought I recognized her. I've watched a lot of their videos. I've loved their work that they've done on Mellotron.
That Mellotron video that she did through Reverb is how I discovered her. We had another tech named Tim Warneck from Retrolinear around the corner from all of us, but he took a major career change. He got it frustrated working on current gear, and he just went back to designing IC chips. So that's what he does now. So we can afford Beltone one day every 2 weeks. It's expensive.
So this is Allison, Darian, and Joe all at work.
That's
on 3 different projects at the same time.
They love coming in. They have a good time
I
here.
believe that there was somebody that did that kind of stuff in our area. It was so cool.
It's not only that, but their direction is they simply won't work on anything that's more current than 1990. They just won't. Listen, they disappeared for a couple of weeks. Then they went down to the islands to work on Lenny Kravitz gear. They had to work in an air conditioned container outside. Right? I don't even know if they saw Lenny or went in the house or anything. But it's like you walk into the thing and they work on synthesizers, and they're wonderful to have around. Really, really innovative people and a lot of fun to hang out with. Who else?
I got a question, just sort of a niche question. Do you guys have any relationship with Thomas Dolby?
Did you say Thomas Dolby? Hung out with him one time. He's a great human being. Love seeing him live, and we hope to. So right now we don't, but in fact his name has been popping up over the past couple of weeks as somebody that we ought to bring on board because he cares to educate. He cares to talk about this. He's not just a performer. And it's wonderful to find people like this that really want to, I don't want to say they want to give back, but they want to share the knowledge that they have, and Thomas Dolby is definitely one of them.
You talked a lot about Queen. Are you working with Spike Edney?
No.
Oh.
Is he a part of the organization? Is that what it is?
Yeah. Well, no. He's a keyboard player. He's been with them.
Okay. Yeah. You know, the curator is the one that's got his hands on all this stuff. We have a unique relationship with the Brian May camp because we work with the guitarist named Ariel, who has a guitar in the Brian May guitar line. So we are certainly hoping that next time he's on the East Coast, he'll come by. That'll be pretty heavy duty. Brian May's a great guitarist and seems to be a good human being, and hopefully that'll open up some new doors as well.
And what about with rolling with all the synth-ax and everything, going Fripp, going that route?
Yeah, well, you know what? The thing is that we have a unique collection of guitar synthesizers and systems. Fripp is somebody that we would love to get involved. He's a little busy, kind of overall, but we have many people that are close with his camp, and we would love to bring him on board. We have some of his gear, but again, that's an innovative artist, far beyond just somebody that picks up a guitar and plays. Adrian Ballou is another one. You know, he was his cohort, and right. I mean, Adrian Ballou is just ridiculous, and if you're going to have anybody demo pedals, you want Adrian Ballou. I mean, and pick him whether he was with Zappa or Talking Heads or any of the bands he was in. You know, he's another, you know, musical mental super genius that when he was gearing up to go out with 9 Inch Nails, which didn't happen, I was watching his posts online. He's going through dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of pedals to create the sound palette that he needed for the gig. Then he ended up not getting the gig. It's like, do that with us, man.
Reminds me, I got to call his tech. I got to call Andre one of these days to catch up with him.
Yeah, let's get Adrian in the building. Other questions?
Oh my God. Yes.
We're good. We're good.
All right.
Everybody,
Yeah.
let's have a big round of applause for EMEAPP. Drew and David. This is another series of our Masterclass series, another edition, and there's more to come. And we'd like to thank you guys for coming and sharing your knowledge. As I said, what we'll do is we'll get some small tours organized and bring whoever's interested over in groups, and we'll organize that and make that happen for you, okay? All right, everybody, thanks again. Take care.
Thank you, guys. Take my business card if you want to.